Welcome to the channel, everyone. We're really glad you could join us today. We love digging into interesting research. And if you enjoy what we explore, definitely think about subscribing.
Yeah, it helps us keep these conversations going.
So today we're looking at something, well, pretty fascinating, the sort of dual nature of generative AI. We've got a couple of recent studies that paint a complex picture.
That's right. One shows AI as a surprisingly effective tool for, believe it or not, uncovering truth, while the other, well, it hints at a potentially concerning effect on human creativity.
Okay, let's start with the truth part. Conspiracy theories. They're everywhere, and the common thinking is that they're incredibly hard to tackle with facts, right?
Exactly. The idea is often that these beliefs aren't really about facts, but more about underlying psychological needs, making them super resistant to evidence.
But this new research you mentioned, Costello, Pennycook, and Rand, they had a different idea.
They did. Their hypothesis was, basically, maybe the old ways of debunking just didn't go deep enough or weren't personal enough. So they thought, what if we use something powerful like GPT-4 Turbo?
Okay, using an LLM, why that specific model?
Well, because models like GPT-4 Turbo are really advanced now.
Yeah.
They can generate very nuanced, human-like arguments and, importantly, tailor them specifically to what someone is saying.
Right, so it's not just generic fact-checking.
Precisely. So they set up this study with nearly 2,200 Americans. These folks had conversations, like back and forth over 3 rounds, with GPT-4 Turbo.
And the AI's job.
Its job was specifically to counter the evidence the participants themselves cited for their chosen conspiracy theory. So very direct, very personalized refutation.
And the results. Did it actually work?
It really did. Quite dramatically, actually. On average, belief in the specific conspiracy theory dropped by 20% after talking to the AI.
20%. That's significant.
It is. And what's maybe even more impressive is that this drop wasn't just temporary. They checked again 2 months later, and the effect was still there, undiminished.
Wow. And this wasn't just for one type of theory.
No, it held across a whole range.
Mm.
Classic ones like JFK or aliens, but also very current, highly politicized ones about COVID-19 or the 2020 U.S. election. Even worked for people who had those beliefs quite strongly.
Okay, but here's a question. What about real conspiracies? Did the AI just debunk everything?
Great question. And that's a crucial nuance. No, it didn't reduce belief in historically confirmed conspiracies, like Project MKUltra, for instance.
That could distinguish.
It seemed to act more like an informed guide, focusing on the unsubstantiated stuff. They even had a professional fact-checker review a sample of the AI's claims.
Yeah.
The fact-checker found 99.2% were true. Only 0.8% were deemed misleading, and none were actually false.
That's a pretty good accuracy rate.
It really is. And there was another interesting outcome, a sort of positive spillover. People didn't just reduce belief in their chosen conspiracy, they also showed less belief in other unrelated ones.
Huh. Like a general skepticism boost.
Sort of, yeah. And they also reported being more likely to try and rebut other conspiracy believers they encountered.
Okay, this sounds incredibly promising as a tool, but
Yeah.
how do you get people who are deep into these beliefs to even talk to an AI debunker in the first place? That seems like the big hurdle.
That is the practical challenge, absolutely. Researchers like Bago and Bonifon have floated some ideas, maybe integrating AI summaries directly into search results when people look up these topics.
So it appears alongside the misinformation.
Right. Or maybe AI-powered social media accounts that actively reply to misinformation. Or even encouraging friends and family to gently suggest using an AI tool as a source for unbiased facts. It's tricky. Requires careful thought about implementation.
Definitely. Okay, so that's AI as a potential force for truth. But you mentioned another side to this coin, something about creativity.
Yes, let's pivot to that. This is based on a different study by Doshi and Hauser. They looked at AI's impact, not on belief, but on creative output, specifically writing.
How did they test that?
They had people write short stories. Some writers got access to ideas generated by GPT-4, others didn't. Then, independent evaluators read and rated the stories.
And what did they find? Did the AI help?
It did, quite clearly on an individual level. Stories written with AI assistance were rated as more creative, and they defined creative as both novel and useful, which is interesting. They were also seen as better written and just more enjoyable to read.
Okay, so AI makes writers better, or at least their output better.
The output, yes. And the effect was even stronger when writers could choose from multiple AI-generated ideas, not just one.
Was this true for everyone, or did it help some writers more than others?
That's maybe the most striking part. The biggest boost was for writers who were initially rated as less creative. Yeah. Access to AI ideas kind of
Yeah.
leveled the playing field. It
Yeah.
brought the creativity scores of stories from less inherently creative writers almost up to par with those from naturally more creative writers.
So it's like an equalizer. That sounds positive, doesn't it? Making creative tools more accessible?
It does sound positive on the surface, but there was a catch, a pretty significant one.
Uh-oh. What was it?
While individual stories got better and more creative, when you looked at all the AI-assisted stories together, they actually became more similar to each other.
More similar. How so?
The diversity of the stories decreased. It seems like the AI ideas, while helpful, also acted as an anchor, pulling writers towards common themes or styles, even if unintentionally.
Right, so everyone gets a boost, but they all end up sounding a bit the same, less unique overall.
Exactly. Less diversity, less real outlier novelty across the whole group. So individual creativity goes up, but collective diversity might go down.
That really is a paradox. It creates a kind of social dilemma, doesn't it?
Precisely. As an individual writer, you have a strong incentive to use AI. Your story will likely be rated better. But if everyone does it,
Then the whole creative landscape might become less varied, less interesting, maybe. Even if each individual piece is technically better.
that's the potential risk they highlighted. A loss of collective diversity and perhaps true originality in fields that rely on it.
So putting these two studies together, AI seems incredibly powerful. It can cut through misinformation in a really targeted way, shift firmly held beliefs.
Yeah, offering a genuinely optimistic tool there.
And it can boost individual creative performance, especially for those who might struggle otherwise.
But that same assistance might inadvertently homogenize our collective creative output, making us, as a whole, potentially less diverse and original in our ideas.
It's a fascinating tension. On one hand, truth and individual enhancement. On the other, a potential flattening of collective expression.
It really leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? And this is something for you, listening, to think about too. How do we navigate this? How do we harness the power of AI to make us individually better informed and more capable?
Without losing that crucial diversity and novelty that makes society, culture, and, well, creativity itself so rich. What does this mean for the choices you make about information, about using these tools?
It's definitely something worth pondering as this technology becomes even more integrated into our lives.
Absolutely. Well, if you found this discussion interesting and you want to keep exploring these kinds of complex topics with us, please do subscribe to the channel.
We'd appreciate it.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.